podcast. I'm Ash, and I'm so grateful you're here with me today. Today, we're diving into a theme that I think so many of us can relate to: falling apart versus falling together. I say versus because I feel like a lot of us put those two versions of ourselves against each other. At least I know I do at times. But here's something I've realized: these two aren't really opposites or opponents. It's not as simple as saying you're either in a season of falling apart or falling together. The truth is, most of the time, falling apart is what makes falling together possible. Think about that for a second. When things start to unravel, when life feels messy, when it feels like you're losing pieces of yourself, those moments are very painful, absolutely. But they're also deeply honest. They reveal what's fragile, what's unsustainable, what we've been carrying that maybe was never ours to hold in the first place. And I know for me, some of the biggest turning points didn't come from the times when everything was polished and perfect. My turning points didn't come when life looked neat and presentable. They came when the version of life that I had been clinging to crumbled. And in the middle of all that mess, and the exhaustion, the tears, and the confusion, I started to notice there was room to piece myself back together differently. Maybe in a way that felt more real too. But here's the question I had to face. Why do we hold on so tightly to pieces of ourselves that we already know are breaking us? Why do we protect the habits and identities and expectations that are quietly draining us, instead of letting them fall away? The truth is, letting go feels like a loss. It feels like a failure. But sometimes the very things we fight to hold on to are the same things that keep us from becoming who we are meant to be. And once those pieces fall, we finally have space to rebuild. Not the life we thought we were supposed to live, but a life that's truer, freer, and maybe even more aligned with who we really are. So in this conversation, let's allow ourselves to fall apart a little bit. I want you to picture a tree entering autumn. Its leaves begin to let go, sometimes slowly, one by one, other times all at once when the wind or rain pushes them free. Eventually, every leaf that no longer serves the tree will fall. Some of those leaves will blow far away, but others will gather at the base of the tree. And here's the most beautiful part of it. Those fallen leaves don't just disappear in vain. Over time, they break down, and some of those very nutrients will enrich the soil, feeding the roots and making the tree stronger for next season. In the same way, we need to let parts of ourselves fall away, the patterns, expectations, or versions of us that no longer serve us. Because it's in that falling apart, we enrich our own roots, creating the foundation we need to grow stronger, steadier, and feel more alive. I'm going to share pieces of my own story, and I will also share some stories from others who've been brave enough to speak about their own unraveling. And along the way, I want to pull in some of the why our brains and hearts react the way they do when life feels like it's just falling apart. Look, I get it. Falling apart is exhausting. I'm tired of being on that side of it too. Sometimes I catch myself thinking, why can't I just recognize what's not serving me and simply pull it off myself? But the truth is, it isn't that easy. Learning to let go isn't automatic. It's a skill we have to practice. It means building self-awareness, setting boundaries, learning our triggers, and taking real responsibility for our own feelings and actions. It means checking in with ourselves regularly instead of letting the pressure quietly build up until everything bursts. And with our busy lives, we don't really remember to schedule this time in. We should, we need to, but we don't. And I'm guilty of that too. Sometimes at the end of the day, I just resort to scrolling away on my phone and disassociating from everything, instead of just taking a few moments to work on me. And without knowing, that scrolling is just adding more weight to my heart and mind. We need to prioritize ourselves. We have to consciously and constructively identify what's weighing us down, name it, face it, so we can problem solve and start doing better. It's uncomfortable and it's tiring, but it's also where real change begins. Does that mean we will one day never fall apart again? Absolutely not. But every time we choose to do that work, we're not just falling apart, we're teaching ourselves how to fall together on purpose. I want to share part of my own story that, for me, really captures what it's like to fall apart. This is just one small part of my story, but I'm currently working on the falling together portion of it, so I thought it would be best to share some of the background. Years ago, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, an autoimmune disorder that affects the thyroid. I broke, I cried, I really cried, harder than I had in years. And I realized why. At first, it felt like my body had betrayed me. I was losing hair, brain fog, breaking out in hives, gaining weight no matter what I did, dealing with inflammation, body aches, mood swings, anxiety, exhaustion. On the outside, I was still trying to show up as a professional, a mom, and a wife, the person who was supposed to have it all together. But on the inside, I felt like everything was unraveling. I didn't recognize my body, and in some moments, I didn't even recognize myself. And that's the thing about falling apart. It rarely happens neatly. It's layered. It shows up in your health, your mind, your relationships, your sense of identity. At the time, I thought, this must mean I'm failing. Because when you can't keep up with the life the way you're used to doing, when your body and your mind are giving out on you, it feels like weakness. But now, looking back, I see that season differently. The breaking down was also an awakening. When my symptoms first started to appear, I was personally going through one of the toughest seasons of my life. Years of chronic emotional stress can disrupt the immune system, cortisol disruption, hormone imbalances. It all contributes to the onset and progression. Hashimoto's forced me to pay attention. I had to become more self-aware, more compassionate, and more attuned to my hidden battles. I thought I was handling them well, or doing good by not handling them at all. It taught me to slow down and rethink what it actually means to be strong. Falling apart physically and emotionally became the space where I could begin to piece myself back together in a more authentic way. Getting that diagnosis made it real, but at the same time, finding out there was actually a reason for why I felt so miserable gave me a strange sense of relief. It wasn't all in my head, and I wasn't being weak or lazy. There was a name for what I was going through. It hit me that this was the beginning of a new journey. I was already overwhelmed with everything I had on my plate, and now I had to figure out how to carry this too. I felt frustrated and even betrayed. I had worked so hard to live healthy, spent so much money and time researching on how to eat clean, using low-tox products. So why was this happening to me? But beneath it all, there was something deeper. That moment of falling apart was really about facing my own humanity, realizing I couldn't control everything, that my body had limits, and I let other people and events take up too much space in my heart when they weren't even worthy of it. I was going to have to learn how to live differently. But most importantly, it was okay to live fully for me and my family. It wasn't selfish. It was self-care. It's been 4 years since that diagnosis, and only recently have I started to really take those pieces of me that shattered that day and begin putting them back together. Slowly, gently, intentionally. Falling apart at that moment was painful, but looking back, it was also the moment that set me on the path toward falling together in a way I never expected. When life feels like it's falling apart, it's not just in your head. Your brain and body are wired to react that way. Our minds crave stability and predictability. So when things start to build up and unravel, whether it's our health, a relationship, career, or even a picture of the life we once imagined, our whole system goes into alarm mode. That's why you might feel anxious, panicked, foggy, or even completely shut down. It's your brain and body trying to protect you. But here's the thing, once those alarms quiet down, don't just move on like nothing happened. I want you to pause. Look around at what triggered them in the first place. Ask yourself, what needs attention? What boundaries do I need to set? Or what patterns need to shift? So that next time your system doesn't have to scream so loudly to get your attention. You don't have to be strong all the time. Breaking down is human. I say that makes you even stronger. It's all a part of the process. And just to be clear, breaking down doesn't always have to look like an emotional explosion or a complete undoing. Sometimes it's quieter than that. It might look like a few tears you finally let yourself shed, or going for a long run just to shake the weight off your shoulders. For some of us, it's a late night deep cleaning of the house, or baking 20 loaves of sourdough bread just to feel like you're in control of something. Other times, it's louder. A scream in the car, a war cry that finally lets out the frustration you've been carrying. However it shows up for you, the release isn't weakness. It's your mind and body's way of saying something has to change. It's the signal that something inside of you is asking for care, for adjustment, for attention. And listening to that signal is often the first step toward putting the pieces back together in a way that feels more true. I want us all to pause and reflect on what we've talked about so far. I know for me, I used to believe that falling apart was just part of the cycle. Something everyone did. You cry, you scream, you let it out, and then you pick yourself up and jump right back into the same loop. Almost like telling myself, all right, good talk, same time next month, next week. But here's what shifted for me. I realized I didn't have to just keep recycling the same breakdowns. I could actually stop, look at the pieces scattered all around me and evaluate them, and ask myself, what can I do differently this time? What needs to change so I don't keep coming back here? The mindset shift turned my breakdowns into something more purposeful. Instead of being the end of the road, they became checkpoints. Opportunities to create goals, make adjustments, and step closer to a breakthrough. And that has made all the difference. The weight we carry isn't just about the present moment. It's layered. Trauma, childhood experiences, the way we were nurtured or not nurtured. All of that shapes how we respond when life feels overwhelming. Some of us were raised in environments that taught resilience and emotional intelligence, while others were taught survival, silence, or self-blame. And on top of that, society doesn't exactly make it easy. The pressure to hold everything together, to perform, to succeed, to be strong, to stay positive, it can make us feel like breaking down is unacceptable. So let's think. Let's ask ourselves some questions. I want you to ask yourself, what messages did I grow up with about falling apart? When I was a child, was I taught how to name and process emotions? Or was I taught to silence them, shame them, self-blame? How does society, social media, family, or culture pressure me to hold it together? And when I break down, do I see it as weakness, or could I start to see it as a signal that change is needed? Now, I want you to process these questions out loud. You can say them out loud, repeat them, and answer, or write it down. But don't just leave it in your heart. Don't leave it in your mind. In order to start the process, you really need to make these thoughts come to life. I want to share a listener submission with you. She wants to remain anonymous, so I will call her Stephanie. But she did mention that I can mention her age because she hopes that someone her age can listen to this and know they're not alone and it's not too late. Stephanie is 49 years young. She wrote an email that at first she was kind of asking for advice. And in her own words, you could hear the weight of everything she was carrying. She talked about a breakdown that she had, the exhaustion, the tears, the feeling of being stuck in the same painful cycle over and over again. Because the story and details she shared could reveal who she is, I'm going to kind of summarize everything she wrote to me and the discussion that her and I had back and forth. Stephanie talked about feeling like she was failing her family. She couldn't stick to routines, and every time she started a new habit, like going to the gym or waking up early to start her day, she would give up. As soon as she slipped up once and didn't follow through with that habit she was trying to form, she would just mentally check a box and say, okay, I failed. Work was piling up. Her children needed help with homework. She and her husband hadn't been on vacation or even a simple date night in a long time. And by the evening times, she was still cooking, feeling overwhelmed and depleted, and didn't have a moment to herself all day. This is what she was going through day in and day out. She described that her body has started to feel like her biggest enemy. Exhaustion, bloating, unexplained weight gain. Her clothes didn't fit the way she was used to it fitting. One day, she escaped to her bedroom and sat on the edge of her bed. She looked over at her dresser, which was piled with clutter, and in one corner was a stack of self-help books and half-filled journals. She had bought them to start new habits, but she never stuck with them. The stack didn't feel inspiring anymore. It felt like it was mocking her, proof of all her failures. With the sounds of her family in the living room and her inner voice growing harsher and harsher, the pressure boiled over. She lost it. She cried for hours. And then when the tears finally stopped, she did what so many of us do. She told herself, this is just life. This is how my story will always go. But here's the part that I pointed out about her whole message to me, a part that I really loved and I wanted to shine a light on for her. In writing out her story, she almost wrote out her own map forward. She vented honestly, and through that venting, she was able to name her struggles, evaluate what wasn't working, and even recognize some of the deeper layers she wanted to work on. But in that moment, she didn't see it as clarity. To her, it just felt like she was listing all the ways she was failing, all of her weaknesses. When I followed up with her, we talked through those very points. And instead of me stepping in with a list of answers, I told her, you already have the map. You just need a compass. I wanted her to feel empowered, to move at her own pace as she processed what she had written. Because here's the thing, sometimes when someone gives us advice, even if it's well-intentioned, it can actually make us feel weaker. Like, okay, they have it all figured out. Why can't I? Or they make it sound so easy. It's not that easy. And that's because our story all comes from a different starting point. So the way we recover is going to be different. Maybe similar, but different. And if we're just handed the solution, we lose the chance to practice problem solving for ourselves. It's almost like being given like a calculator. It works until it doesn't. And when it doesn't work, we never learn the steps. And so now we're just stuck. That's why our conversation wasn't about fixing her or handing over answers. It was about uncovering the layers she had already started to name and helping her see that she has the strength to work through them, one step at a time. So here's where her mindset shift started. She realized her breakdowns wasn't just a collapse. It was information. It was her body and her mind demanding that she stop, pay attention, and finally care for herself the way she cares for everyone else. Instead of seeing her tears as weakness, she began to see them as signals. And in that moment, she stopped asking, why can't I hold it together? And instead, she started asking, what is this moment right now trying to teach me? I actually shared her words with a colleague of mine who's also in the mental health field, and their feedback was so true and empowering. So I want to share it with you. They said, what stood out to me the most about Stephanie wasn't just that she felt stuck in a cycle. It's how clearly she already understood her pain. Most people think that breakthrough happens when you're at the end of it, when you find the answer and when everything's brighter. But sometimes the real breakthrough is when you finally just name the truth out loud. Once you name it, you can face it, and once you face it, you can change it. I really loved hearing her point of view. It made me think, you already carry what you need to move forward. But if you convince yourself that change is supposed to be easy and flawless, you're going to set yourself up for disappointment before you even begin. Some reflection questions that came up to me with Stephanie's story is, and again, I want you to ask yourself this genuinely and honestly. When I think about my own cycles, what patterns do I notice myself repeating? And what might those breakdowns be trying to teach me? If I already hold the map to my healing, what compass do I need to guide me toward using it? And that compass can be a friend for support, boundaries that you need to set, more self-awareness, whatever it may be. I want you to reflect on these questions and remember, this is not about solving it right now. It's just about starting the path to recognizing your behaviors and patterns and cycles. This isn't just Stephanie's story. It's something that we all feel in different ways, which raises two big questions for me. Why do we fall apart the way we do? And what makes some people more resilient than others? Part of the answer lies in how we are wired. Our brains are designed to crave stability, routine, and predictability. So when life pulls us into chaos, whether it's illness, stress, loss, or simply just the day-to-day grind of daily responsibilities, our system doesn't see it as an inconvenience. It sees it as a threat. That's why anxiety spikes, panic creeps in, or fog makes it hard to think. Shutting down isn't weakness, it's biology. It's your brain and body trying to keep you safe. But biology is only one layer of the story. The way we navigate those moments also comes from what shaped us, the homes we grew up in, the coping tools we were or weren't taught, and the experiences that left marks on us. Maybe you were raised in a space where emotions were acknowledged, where falling apart was seen as normal, and resilience was probably modeled. Or maybe you were raised in silence, where emotions were dismissed, or where the only way to survive was to pretend you were fine. Both leave imprints on how we handle the breaking points. And then there's the weight of society. We live in a culture that rewards productivity, positivity, and holding it all together, even when it's hurting us inside. So when we finally crack, it feels like shame. It feels like failure. But falling apart isn't about personal defect. It's a human experience. You don't have to start over at step one. That step is just an imaginary line we created anyway. You can begin falling back together right where you are and exactly as you are. The difference between falling apart and falling together often comes down to awareness and practice. People who learn to pause and name what's happening and reach for tools, whether it's journaling or therapy or simply just rest, they often find that their breakdowns become breakthroughs. It doesn't mean they don't fall apart. It means they learn how to rebuild with intention. So that day that Stephanie sat on her bed and she saw the piles of books and journals on her dresser, it wasn't about the clutter or anything else that was distressing her that day. It was about all the moments leading up to that point. Reminders that we've tried and we failed. The goals we've set were abandoned. The key isn't avoiding those moments. It's asking, what can I learn from here? What needs to shift so I don't keep repeating these cycles? And that's where resilience is born. Not in never breaking, but in choosing to face the break and rebuild differently. There are so many layers to this theme we're talking about. And honestly, it's not something you can tie up in one podcast episode. My hope is that you really sit with this and let it unfold and begin building a stronger understanding of what falling apart and falling together look like in your own life. So if you're in a season where things feel heavy, allow yourself to fall apart, but do it safely and constructively. Write it down, type it out, record yourself speaking the words that come to your mind. Label it, name it, confront it. Because the act of bringing it out of your head and into the open is the first step toward reshaping it. Your story matters, and sharing it might be exactly the thing that helps you or even someone else find their way forward. You don't need to start over from scratch. Step 1 is just a line we've made up to measure ourselves against. You can begin falling back together right here, right now, exactly as you are. And if you're wondering how, I made a few practical takeaway steps to guide you through that process of falling apart for the sake of falling together. First, I want you to notice the signals. Pay attention when your body and mind start sounding the alarms. It can be fatigue, irritability, brain fog, constantly feeling overwhelmed. Don't dismiss them. There are cues that something needs tending. When life feels like it's unraveling, pause long enough to listen. What is your body telling you? What emotions are rising up again and again? Instead of running from the alarms, treat them as signals that something needs attention. Number 2, name what's breaking. Write it down, say it out loud, or share it with someone safe. Naming takes the power away from the vague everything is wrong feeling and gives you something tangible to work with. Write it down and say it out loud. Just share it with someone you trust and you will feel the process start. Putting language to the falling apart moments turns chaos into clarity. What you name, you can face, and what you face, you can eventually change. Reframe the breakdown. Instead of, this is the end, ask, what is this moment trying to show me? Shifts like this turn collapse into clarity. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Try asking, what is this moment showing me? Shifting the question doesn't erase the pain, but it opens a doorway to new perspective. The next one, choose one gentle step forward. Don't overwhelm yourself with a full plan. Pick one small action. Rest, or maybe setting a boundary, asking for help. Just making one single change and honor it as it progresses. You don't need a 10-step plan, just one step. Make it intentional. That could mean setting a boundary or taking a break, reaching out for help, or even something as simple as drinking water and resting. Falling together happens one small choice at a time. My biggest takeaway from this step is release the myth of perfection. I have to work on that every day because sometimes I feel like I have to have everything ready to go, perfectly in line, check, in order to start something. Sometimes you just need to start. The last one, nourish or rebuild your roots. I want you to listen to this one carefully. If your foundation feels shaky because of toxic family patterns or past wounds, it's okay to start fresh. You can replant yourself in a healthier soil. with new routines, healthier relationships, and environments that support the person you're becoming. Sometimes the places we come from weren't safe or supportive. If that's your story, I want you to hear this. You are not bound to those roots forever. You get to plant yourself in new soil. That might look like surrounding yourself with better relationships, or practicing new habits, or choosing values that feel true to you now. Falling together doesn't mean going back to where you started. It can also mean finding more solid ground to grow from. So don't be afraid to replant yourself somewhere. Or if you feel fine where you're at, take time to nourish your foundation, nourish your roots, and grow stronger. If you're still here with me at this point in the episode, thank you. Truly, I mean it. But even more than that, thank yourself for choosing to be here, for carving out this little pocket of time that isn't just listening to me talk, but giving yourself space to reflect, breathe, and take in some self-care. That matters. You matter. If there's one thing I want you to carry from today, it's this. Falling apart isn't the opposite of falling together, and it doesn't mean you are weak. You don't have to start over at step 1. You can begin right where you are, exactly as you are. Before you rush back into life, I just want you to take a moment to breathe with me. We went over a lot of heavy things today, so just take a moment and put your hand on your heart. Inhale in and exhale. You are here, and you are doing the work. I will have a breakdown of today's episode on the guided worksheets that you can find on my website, developedco.com/podcast. That's develovedco.com/podcast. There you will find the questions mentioned in this episode and a space for you to practice and grow the skills we are learning. In the meantime, I want you to ask yourself this. What is one piece of me that's ready to fall away? And what might it be making room for? And what is one gentle step I can take to nourish or rebuild my roots? Is it creating a boundary, getting some rest, asking for help, maybe choosing to start a new small habit? I want you to just really start reflecting on these questions, because this could be the start of the deeper work that you put in. If this episode met you where you are, share it with someone you love. And if you're ready to tell your story, anonymous or not, I'd be honored to hold it with you. You can submit on the site or message me directly. Thank you for listening, and thank you for showing up for yourself. I'm Ash, and this is the Develop Podcast. Real growth comes from real conversations. I'll see you next time.